Trying new things is hard, but growth is an essential part of life. If you're looking to take your next big step or change your direction, but don't know where to begin or how to even start, seeing how someone else successfully managed this in their life could be priceless. Shifting Gears, the ultimate roadmap to crafting your legendary brewery or restaurant, a new book by Jake Losey, might be exactly what you're looking for. See, Jake and his wife Kaylee opened a brewery back in 2019 with a dream and pretty much no experience. I probably don't need to tell you this, but COVID struck shortly thereafter. Not an ideal situation for a brand new business of any kind, let alone one that would be literally forced to close its doors. Despite that setback and many more, they not only managed to stay open, now they are thriving, and Presidential Brewing Company has become the cool neighborhood hangout they both envisioned it would be, and also one of my favorite places. Jake's book is meant to help other aspiring entrepreneurs achieve the same heights that their customers and amazing staff have driven them to. He hopes that he can help fast forward the amount of time it takes you to build an idea from neutral, great idea, no movement, to legendary, a thriving brewery or restaurant. In addition to sharing the practical steps that have been proven to help build his dream, this book is also chock full of stories about the inner workings of the brewery. You will get to learn an in-depth background of how they got started and how they have continued to thrive and grow. Shifting Gears, the ultimate roadmap to crafting your legendary brewery or restaurant, is available right now on Amazon in paperback or on your Kindle. Pick up a copy today, and when you visit Presidential, which you definitely should, tell the folks there I sent you. And now, on with the show. This is the Summer School series of Lessons We Forgot. This episode comes from the end of Season 1, and in it, I'm pretty hard on the early version of me as a teacher. I talk about all of the things I used to get wrong, and to be fair, I do mention how I've grown as a teacher since then and how I've learned from my mistakes, so the message is one of hope. But, in the episode, I really do go pretty hard at the me when I was in my mid-20s. Recently, I've been actually thinking about just the opposite. Sure, this new version of me as a teacher has tons more wisdom and experience. It's way harder to get under my skin, and I've really smoothed out a lot of the rough edges. But there's something missing too. Something that didn't make it through all of the refinement that needed to be done. What happened to the blind optimism, and the almost obnoxiously positive attitude, and the trust I had for everyone I worked with? Those parts of me got lost somewhere along the way. I actually wrote an entire episode for Season 3 that goes into much more detail about that particular question, but I thought it was really important to mention it here as you're listening to this week's episode to remind yourself that in your quest to get better, you don't also lose the things that already make you great. This is the Summer School series of Lessons We Forgot, and this episode is called Personal Growth. Personal growth can be a long and sometimes painful journey, but it's our job to help our students on their path from childhood through their teenage years. By the time our students leave middle school at the end of 8th grade, many of them would be almost unrecognizable to their 6th grade selves. Not only do our students grow physically, we see many of them grow in confidence, slowly becoming more self-reliant and leaning less and less on the adults in their lives. Some of our students develop a remarkably robust work ethic, surpassing our expectations and even surprising themselves. They somehow learn to manage the stress that comes from navigating social, academic, and extracurricular pressures at school and in the rest of their lives. Most of them make great leaps in their decision-making, sometimes even gaining the capacity to think their way out of problems that would have stymied them in the past. It's not something that can be rushed, and it's not always done in a straight line, but seeing personal growth in our students has to be one of the most satisfying parts of our job as teachers. While we can't help but see the growth in our students, after all, it's often glaringly obvious to everyone, we seem to look past it in ourselves and in each other, and that's a real shame. I knew a teacher I worked with who used to say yes to the first request for his time, no matter what it was. It was a nice thing to do, and he had good intentions, but he'd end up missing out on the best use of his time and effort. He put in long hours at work, but he didn't really get much out of it, and his work-life balance was all out of whack. Because of that, he didn't really understand where he fit in, and he wasn't really sure if his role at school was important or not. Now he's much more selective about what he agrees to. I still think he's pretty generous with his time, but instead of spreading himself too thin, now he fills those roles that are suited to him, making his time at school much more satisfying. Another teacher I knew expected their students to follow the rules exactly to the letter. They were completely inflexible. Watching them teach was like watching someone bang their heads against the wall and expect the wall to give in first. Class was a constant battle of wills. You could often see the frustration on their face at the end of the day, and their students were often just as frustrated. Now that same teacher adjusts their expectations for what their current students need. I've even seen them change directions for a lesson between classes, or sometimes they even change it up in class on the fly when things are obviously not going to work out. I probably don't need to tell you this, but that makes a world of difference, and it makes life easier for everyone involved. I once knew this guy who would blame his students for not getting it. He would complain to his colleagues, his friends, and even his wife at home. He dug his heels in and refused to budge because he thought his students should be able to do it. Even when someone offered him a different way, even if that way worked and was actually easier than the way he was doing it, he still held out. Now that same guy is constantly adjusting what he does, looking for ways to make his best lessons even better. He learns from the expert teachers around him, integrating their ideas into what he already does. He learns from teachers who might have less experience, but who have bold new ideas, looking for new perspectives that he hasn't considered. Now he even takes advice from his students, forcing him to think about the next generation of his classes, a group that he quite honestly has very little in common with. Probably the worst example of this is a teacher I knew who focused on what he didn't have instead of making the best use of what he had at his disposal. He dwelled on the good old days when, according to him, teaching was much easier, the kids were better, and everyone was happier. Instead of dealing with his current reality, he fought to get back what he had lost. And when that wasn't possible, he made sure everyone knew how he felt about it. This one is a hard one. This is one I'm still struggling with. That last line probably wasn't as dramatic as I initially thought it'd be when I wrote it, and I'm sure you already figured out that all those people I used to know are just the younger versions of myself. But when I take time to look back at what I used to be as a teacher and reflect on my own personal growth, I'm pretty sure that the baby teacher version of me would have a hard time recognizing the 2025 model, even though, like everyone else, I'm still a work in progress. Personal growth can be a long and painful process. It very rarely is done in a straight line. I know I took a huge step back during COVID, and that hasn't been the only bump in the road. Now I just wish I could speed up the growth process in myself. And believe me, I'm trying really hard, and I'm trying to be proactive, but this is something that cannot be rushed. I encourage everyone who hears this to think back at where you were at your own starting point, whether that was with me at our school or wherever your journey started that led to the place where you currently are. Take great pride in your own personal growth. Allow yourself to celebrate how far you've come. Sure, you still have room for improvement. We all do. And it's always good to think about how much better you can become. But every once in a while, it's really nice, and probably really healthy for us too, to stop and reflect about all the ways the people we are now have changed and grown from when we were the people we used to know. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Lessons We Forgot. I'm the host, Chris Winkle. You can contact me at lessonsweforgot@gmail.com, and you can follow the show or message Lessons We Forgot on Facebook. Either way, I'd love to hear from you and welcome you to our community. If you really enjoyed this episode, please consider sharing it with a friend. That is the best way to help grow the podcast. If you want to hear more Lessons We Forgot, I post new episodes on Sunday nights. Make sure you subscribe to follow the show on whatever podcast platform you use. And when you rate the show, like an episode, or leave a comment, we can reach even more listeners. If you hate ads just like me, I do have a Patreon site, patreon.com/lessonsweforgot, and for only $1 a month, you can get the show without ads. You can try that out right now for free to see if it's something you'd be interested in. Thanks again for your support.